The Secret Garden. I'm going to read you the last chapter. As the golden summer changed into the deeper golden autumn, he went to the lake of Como. There he found the loveliness of dreams. He spent his days upon the crystal blueness of the lake, or he walked back onto the soft, thick verdure of the hills and tramped until he was tired, so that he might sleep. But by this time he began to sleep better. He knew, and his dreams had ceased to be a terror to him. Perhaps, he thought, my body is growing stronger. It was growing stronger, but because of the rare, peaceful hours when his thoughts were changed, his soul was slowly going stronger too. He began to think of Misselthwaite and wonder if he should not go home. Now and then he wondered vaguely about his boy, and asked himself what he should feel when he went and stood by the carved four-poster bed again and looked down at the sharply chiselled ivory-white face while it slept, and the black lashes rimmed so startly the close-shut eyes. He shrank from it. One marvel of a day, he walked so far that when he returned the moon was high and full, and all the world was purple-shadowed and silver. The stillness of the lake and the shore and wood was so wonderful that he did not go into the villa he lived in. He walked down to a little burrowed terrace at the water's edge, and sat up a seat and breathed in all the heavenly scents of the night. He felt the strange calmness stealing over him, and it grew deeper and deeper until he fell asleep. He did not know why or when he fell asleep, or when he began to dream, and his dream was so real that he did not feel as if he were dreaming. He remembered afterwards how intensely wide awake and alert he had thought it was. He thought as though he sat and breathed in the scent of the late roses and listened to the lapping of the water at his feet. He heard a voice calling. It was sweet and clear and happy and far away. It seemed very far, but he heard as distinctly as it had been at his very side. "Archie! Archie! Archie!" it said, and then again, sweeter and clearer than before. "Archie! Archie!" He thought. He sprang to his feet, not even startled. It was such a voice, and it seemed so natural that he should hear it. "Laias, Laias," he answered. "Laias, where are you?" "In the garden." It came back like a sound from a golden flute. "In the garden." And then his dream ended. But he did not awaken. He slept soundly and sweetly all through the lovely night. When he did awake, at least it was brilliant morning, and a servant was standing staring at him. He was an Italian servant, and was accomplished as all the servants of the villa were, too accepting without question any strange thing his foreign master might do. No one ever knew when he would go out, or when he'd come in, or where he would choose to sleep, or if he would roam about the garden, or lie in a boat, or on the lake all night. The man held a salver with some letters on it, and he waited quietly until Mr. Craven took them. When he had gone away, Mr. Craven sat a few moments holding them in his hand and looking at the lake. His strange calm was still upon him, and something more, a lightness, as if the cruel thing which had been done had not happened, as he thought, as if something had changed. He was remembering the dream. The real dream. "In the garden," he said, wondering at himself. "In the garden. But the door is locked, and the key is buried deep." When he glanced at the letters a few minutes later, he saw that one lying on top of the rest was an English letter, and came from Yorkshire. It was directed in a plain woman's hand, but it was not a hand he knew. He opened it, thinking of the writer, but for the first words attracted his attention at once. "Dear Sir, I am Susan Sowerby, that maid, bold to speak to you once on the moor. It was about Miss Mary I spoke. I will make bold to speak again. Please, sir, I would come home if I was you. I think you would be glad to come home, and if you will excuse me, sir, I think your lady would ask you to come if she was here. Your obedient servant, Susan Sowerby.